If you find yourself in a high net worth divorce situation, it might seem very simple, but in fact, there could be a lot of complexities to this scenario. So some complexities fall from simply the knowledge of what you have. So if there's one party who's more dominant than the other party or more knowledgeable in taking charge of the assets during the course of the marriage, they're going to have a much better understanding of the real value of the assets. So by way of example, if there's one party who maybe worked and earned the majority of the money while the other party stayed at home and took care of the household and took care of the children and did more of that home management, the earning party may know much better where the money's been invested, how much is in the investments, and what was the cost of those investments. So when you're coming into a high net worth divorce situation, it's very important that you understand not only what you have, but where it is. So we often hear very simply, well, we have $1 million, so he's going to take 500 and I'm going to take 500. Well, those 500s may be worth a substantially different amount. And the reason for that is because this 500 may have a very low cost basis, which means everything above the cost basis is taxable. And this 500 may have a higher cost basis, meaning they're paying less tax. So you not only want to know that you have $1 million at Merrill Lynch, but you want to know in what assets that $1 million is invested, because you want to make sure that you take a fair share of each of the different tax basis assets, meaning this, that, there, as opposed to 50% of the highest taxed assets. So it's very important to understand where your assets are and what they are worth. New Jersey is an equitable distribution state, meaning it is not a 50-50 state. There is a presumption that you're going to divide marital assets on an equal basis, but that is not necessarily going to happen. So first and foremost, it's important to look at the statutory factors to decide what the percentage allocation is going to be to each asset, because one asset could be divided differently than the next asset. For example, if you own a business, you're not dividing it most likely 50-50. You're dividing it in some different ratio. Whereas if you bought a house together, you're probably dividing it on a 50-50 basis. For retirement accounts, there may be a premarital component. That would not be part of the division. We would only be dividing the marital component. So when you look at your total net worth, do not assume you're simply getting half of the assets, because that may not be the case. It also is important to know that you may choose to take the payout in different ways. So if your spouse is keeping the business and you want to keep the house, the payout may come by way of an equity exchange between the house and the business. If you have a pension and a 401k, well, you may not want to offset those because the pension goes into pay status later, where the 401k is an asset now that you can actually draw upon with some consequence. So you want to look at each asset and make a decision for each asset as to the timing, the allocation, and the timing of division as to each piece. Child support is not run-of-the-mill. Child support is not based upon what your neighbor did, and it's not based upon how much time you spend with your child. Child support is based upon supporting the needs of the child. In a high net income situation, the child support is not going to be based upon the child support guideline, or as a lot of people call it, the calculator. It's not going to be based on that. It's going to be based upon a review of the statutory factors. When you are working with counsel to prepare for that conversation, it's really critical that you outline the costs for the needs of the children. Notice I did not say the cost of the children. It's the cost for the needs of the children. Because the cost of your child's need, which includes the pony stable, is not going to be the cost of a child, because not every child has a pony in a stable. So it's really critical that you define your child's lifestyle, outline the cost associated with maintaining that lifestyle, and then discuss how we meet those child's needs and who is going to be responsible to maintain those needs. If you are in a high net worth situation, the alimony is going to be affected by the division of those assets, meaning that one of the alimony factors, there's about 14, one of the factors is the equitable distribution each party receives incident to the divorce. So if you are receiving the lion's share of the assets, that income derived from those assets will be considered in the alimony calculation. For example, if the family is worth $4 million, and by virtue of the allocations, you're receiving $3 million of assets, and let's assume that at least half of them are liquid, you're going to have income imputed to you based upon the earning potential of the 1.5 of available liquid assets from which you can derive an income stream. In addition, there may also be an earned income component to your calculation, meaning if you went back to work, how much could you earn? So you'd have the income from the assets that you received, as well as the income that you earned. Those two combined may indicate that alimony is not required, that you can meet your lifestyle, which is one of the factors, without alimony. Those two combined may indicate that alimony is still needed in order for you to meet your lifestyle. So when we look at all 14 factors, and after we have determined what the equitable distribution is going to be, then we can calculate the alimony amount, which we need to do prior to calculating any child support obligation. If you have any questions about how to handle your high net worth divorce, please call us at Jersey Coast Family Law.